Hey everybody, today we've got the 2026 governor's prediction for the month of July. It's been 3 months since the initial map, so it's time for a bit of an update. But with a lot of time left before the primaries and of course the general election, the candidates, the races, everything is pretty much still up in the air. So some of these ratings are challenging, they're borderline, so there's bound to be at least something you have a different take on. The national environment is more likely than not to at least slightly benefit the Dems. So we'll try to go quick. We'll start with the safe states, and these are expected to be a 10 or more point margin or are otherwise not competitive. It doesn't mean they can't become competitive, but for now, let's start with the Dems. We'll go west coast to east. First up, it's Hawaii. Then we've got California. Plenty of unknowns here on both sides, plus a crowded field. Given it's an open seat, I would expect the state to move a little bit toward the right, but to get it under 10 right now seems like it's off the table. Then a little bit east, we've got Colorado. Then further east, it's Illinois. Both pretty blue states. Colorado is open. Pritzker is running for a third term in Illinois. It's not impossible they get under 10, but for now they're going to be safe. Then in the East Coast, it's Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Maryland. Now in Connecticut, I'm assuming Ned Lamont is going to run for a third term. And in Rhode Island, I know Dan McKee is very unpopular. That could create an opening for the Republicans to at least get this thing down under 10. Last time, McKee was also not that popular, and he coasted to victory in the general. So it's early, but for now, I've got to put it at safe. Now we'll do the safe states for the Republicans. We've got Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, and in the Northeast, it's Vermont. Like with almost any state, there's some fringe scenarios where the Democrats could maybe make a play here and it gets a little bit more competitive. Nebraska could be one of them if Dan Osborne decides to run as an independent. But for right now, I think the states are just too red. Now, Vermont largely depends on if Phil Scott is going to run for yet another term. If he does, I would assume it's going to be extremely safe again. If he doesn't, maybe his lieutenant governor decides to make a run. If that happens, the rating in this deep blue state would not be safe red. So we'll see what Phil Scott decides to do. Now let's go down to the likely states. The margins here are going to be between 5 and 10 points or are semi-competitive. For the Dems on the West Coast, we've got Oregon. This is high single digits, and I know it's a blue state, but usually the governor's margins here are not really all that overwhelming for the Dems. Tina Kotek has some vulnerabilities as well. We'll see what the Republicans do here, but for now, this is not going to be safe. It's going to be likely. Then it's New Mexico. We've got an open seat here. It'll be interesting to see what the shifts and the trends are. For now, I'm going to assume it's Deb Haaland for the Dems, but a lot of time left, and I think likely is the appropriate rating here. The next state is Minnesota. We could be looking at Tim Walz here running for a third term. If it's not him, there's enough of a bench here for the Dems that I don't think it matters too much either way. Now, I know some people are not a big fan of Walz, and he was not that much of a strength on the ticket, even in his home state in the last election. But considering the likely national environment, I would think Walz or most Democrats should at least be able to get this over a 5-point margin. Let's keep going east. We've got Pennsylvania. To me, Josh Shapiro seems like a strong enough incumbent in this otherwise purple state. So I don't think lean would cut it here, but we're not going to put it at safe either. It's going to go right in between. Next, it's New York, and I know Republicans have high hopes of this race becoming competitive. Kathy Hochul is vulnerable. She has to get through a primary, challenged by her own lieutenant governor. But the Republican bench here is on the weaker side. Maybe it's Elise Stefanik, maybe it's Mike Lawler, maybe it's somebody else. But for right now, this race is definitely closer to going safe than it is down to leans. It's going to be an uphill climb here for any Republican. But Dems should not also totally take this race for granted either. The last one here is going to be all the way in the Northeast. It's Maine. It's another open seat and a lot of Dems lining up for it. And federally, this state definitely has a blue lean to it. We've also got to keep an eye on independents or third-party candidates. It's not impossible a Republican can win here. But for right now, this is actually an easy rating. Dems have the advantage, but it's not overwhelming. Now we've got the likely states for the Republicans. First, it's Alaska. In my previous video, I had this at leans, but for right now, I'm going to bump this up to likely. That's at least until we find out who's actually going to run here. If Mary Peltola runs for the Dems, this could easily come down to leans as it gets much more competitive. Republicans could be looking at Lieutenant Governor Nancy Dahlstrom. Either way, this state overall definitely has a red lean to it, even if Dems hope that it's trending toward the left. The politics of this state are not exactly clear cut. They've elected an independent candidate recently for governor. There's different coalitions in the legislature. There is some potential here for something crazy to happen. But until that does, for right now, Republicans, I think, are going to have a moderate advantage. The next state is Texas. For right now, we're looking at Greg Abbott running for a fourth term. Dems with the weaker bench here, they've got to decide if they're going to rerun a failed candidate or go in a new direction. Either way, especially after the last presidential election, this is going to be a clear advantage for almost any Republican. And even though Abbott's been in there for a long time, some voters might start to have some fatigue. It seems like it's going to be a fairly uphill climb for Dems to take him down. I don't think there's any shame in putting this at a high single-digit likely rating. Next, in the Midwest, we've got Iowa. Now, this is borderline lean likely. It's an open seat. Outgoing Governor Kim Reynolds has terrible approval ratings. Dems have their only statewide elected office holder. That's Rob Sand. Republicans have a few candidates lining up, and obviously both sides still have to get through a primary. There's an opportunity here for the Dems. This is not a given. Republicans are going to hold this. So I think it's right at about 5 points for me. But I also don't want to underestimate the potential strength of the Republicans here. In the last blue wave of 2018, Reynolds still won here, but it was by less than 3.5. 4 years later, she won by about 18 to 19 points. So there's a lot of potential here if the Republicans can get that turnout. So we'll see what Sand does if he's able to peel off some more of those moderate voters. Next, we're going to go down to Florida. This is an open seat and it's early, but for right now, it looks like it might be Byron Donalds for the GOP. The Dems have been in disarray here. They might go for Gwen Graham. They might go for former Republican David Jolly. But to me, he pretty much seems like Charlie Crist 2.0. If the Republicans can win here in an open seat in the blue wave of 2018, I think with the rightward movement of the state ever since, that you can make a case this should be a safe rating. So it's borderline, it's high single digits, but because of the usual factors, out of caution, I'm going to put this down just into likely territory. Next, it's South Carolina. Here's another open seat. A lot of questions about who it's going to be for the Republicans. But for the Dems to win here, they would have to hope everything totally lines up for them. Kind of like in neighboring North Carolina in the last governor's election. Republicans had a controversial and a weak nominee. Dems did the opposite and they won it comfortably. Now the state is a lot redder. It's almost a safe rating. But because of the unknowns, similar to Florida, I'm going to take this just down into likely status. Next, it's Ohio. Here it looks very likely it's going to be Vivek Ramaswamy for the Republicans. The Dems right now have Amy Acton in the race, but maybe Sherrod Brown, maybe somebody else jumps in. So this could become more competitive. But this state is pretty friendly to Trump candidates. And while Republicans also don't want to take that for granted, the Dems are the clear underdogs here. So that's why this rating right now is going to be likely. Last, we've got the Granite State, New Hampshire. Just like Vermont, it's 2-year terms here. Kelly Ayotte, the Republican, just got into office this year. I'm assuming she's going to run again. If so, I would imagine she's going to be moderately favored. She overperformed last November. And anything could change, but for right now, this rating is going to be likely. Now we'll go down to the more competitive states. We'll go through these one at a time. Lean are under 5% and Tilt are 1% or less. First, out west, we've got Nevada. Here, the early likely matchup looks like it's going to be Republican Joe Lombardo against Democrat Aaron Ford. Dems dominate the state legislature here. With Lombardo at the top, that seems to be a good balance. His popularity seems to be decent. So nothing is for sure. It should be fairly competitive in the end. But I would say Lombardo should start off with a bit of an advantage. So this is going to go lean Republican. Now their neighbor to the southeast, Arizona. This is likely to be a huge race. I'm assuming it's Katie Hobbs, the Democrat. And on the other side, right now it looks like it might be Andy Biggs. Now this is kind of the opposite of Nevada. Republicans control the legislature. And although Hobbs is not a strong candidate, she's vulnerable. A lot of times that dynamic works. If a Democratic governor can get reelected in a place like Kansas, Louisiana, or Kentucky, it could definitely happen here in Arizona. Now I don't think the Republicans have a rock star candidate, but I think the same about the Dems. It's possible Hobbs refuses to debate yet again, but she's likely to have a favorable national environment. So this one is a total coin flip. But because the Dems are going to be unified here, the Republicans are going to be scrambling. I'm going to keep my rating the same with the incumbent having the very slightest of advantages. It's going to go Tilt for Hobbs. Next, let's go to Kansas. This is a pretty red state, and it is going to be an open seat, but right now they do have a Democrat for governor. The most likely outcome is that a pretty partisan state like Kansas will revert back to its normal partisan lean once the minority party leaves office for governor. So this could end up being a safe pickup for the Republicans, but we don't know who it's going to be yet. They do have former governor Jeff Collier running again. Dems would love to hold this, but it's going to be tough. For right now, the rating here is going to be lean Republican, and that would be a flip and a pickup. Next, we've got Wisconsin. It's unclear if Tony Evers, the Democrat, is going to run for a third term. If he does or he doesn't, this is going to be a competitive state. We know both sides are capable of winning statewide elections here. Dems have done it for the Supreme Court races. They just did it for Senate. Republicans just did it for president. They've also done it for some other statewide offices. It's too early to say what's going to happen, but for right now, I'm going to give the advantage to the incumbent party. That's going to be a tilt for the Dems. Neighboring Michigan, it's going to be the same story. As of right now, this could end up being a three-way race. Former Democrat and mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan, is in this race. And it's an open seat here for the Dems. Looking to fill that is Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. I'd say she's the frontrunner, but obviously she has to get through a potentially crowded primary. Republicans might have John James, but it's the same story for him. He's got to get through a crowded primary field, and he also already has 2 statewide losses under his belt. We'll see if Duggan fades over time, like a lot of independent candidates tend to do. And you might think that he would pull more away from Jocelyn Benson or whoever the Democrat is, but this should be close with the national environment. I'm going to give the slight edge here and a tilt rating to the Dems. The last state is Georgia, and this is another open seat. Brian Kemp is term limited. Plenty of question marks, but we do have Chris Carr, the AG. He's already in the race. On the other side, the most notable candidate is going to be Keisha Lance Bottoms, former mayor of Atlanta. It's possible Stacey Abrams runs yet again, and maybe Jason Carter would have been the strongest candidate in this race, but he decided to take a pass. We're still waiting to see the primary field, but there's no question this is going to be a competitive race. Back in 2018, you probably remember that was a pretty intense race. We all know the Atlanta suburbs have moved hard toward the left. That could be enough to flip this state for the Dems. But if Republicans don't pick a super weak candidate, popularity of outgoing Governor Brian Kemp could be enough for them to hold this seat. I don't think it would be huge. It's right at the 1% margin for me, so it's going to be a tilt for the Republicans. And that's it. That would mean Republicans come out with 19 seats, Democrats 17. For right now, there's really only one flip. That's in Kansas. So much could happen over the next year. We're likely to see a lot of changes. And with so many unknowns, it's difficult to have a lot of confidence in predicting a final map of more than a year out. I can make a case either way on a bunch of these tilt or lean ratings, and there's several more that are borderline likely safe. So it all depends on what your margins are, what you want to focus on, and how much weight you want to put on the expected national environment. But once the candidates or any of the issues changes, then I'll update some of these ratings. But for right now, this is what I've got for the July prediction, so let me know in the comments. How different is your 2026 governor's map? Do you agree with every one of these ratings, or do you have a different take on maybe 4 or 5 of these races? Let me know what you're looking at down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.